Now that we're 15 minutes in, let's get to the kind of the core of the series, which is the 5 fundamental questions, which I think is one of the greatest pieces of, I guess, kind of philosophy in fiction. This is actually, I think, a very important philosophical exercise, maybe one of the simplest and best ones I've ever seen, which throughout the series, the various elder races and the younger races ask a series of 5 questions. Now, I prefer to say 4 questions because the fifth question is a variation of the third question. But I think if you can answer these questions honestly, then they give you a very good summary of who you are, what the essence of your person is, what your soul is, and they provide guidance in life. And that's really what the elder ones are trying to achieve, to get the younger races to know themselves both as individuals and as a species. So I'm going to go through these with examples from the show. So the first question, which is kind of the most fundamental question in all of philosophy, is who are you? And this is the question the Vorlons ask. This is the question of order, because what the Vorlons are most concerned with is how the individual relates to the rest of society. They view the self as being defined by their relationship to others and their position within the social order. So let me just read this. The question asked by the Vorlons and their agents. This question covers matters of personal identity. What do you see yourself as compared to how you define yourself in terms of others, and indeed how much you accept others' definitions of who and what you are? So this receives an entire episode about it, which is probably my favorite episode, called Comes the Inquisitor, in which the Vorlons send a human from the 19th century, later identified to be Jack the Ripper, interestingly enough, to question Delin, who's kind of a messianic figure, along with Sheridan in the show, who views her destiny as forming the army of light and defeating the shadows once more. So he comes and he is testing to make sure she actually is the chosen one. So she has to put these gauntlets on that shock her and will kill her if she fails the test. And he continues to ask her question after question after question to try to make sure that she understands herself. So the question is, generally speaking, who are you? So first she says, I am Delin. And he goes, that is not you. That is a name that other people call you. And then she goes, I am a member of the Grey Council. And he goes, you're merely using the job, what role you fulfill in society. That's not who you are. And then he just continues to ask her, and she continues to give things, I'm the daughter of. And then he goes, that's not you. That is how you define yourself in relation to your parents. And I think his point, and kind of the point of the Vorlons, is there is the self, the I am, the kind of core soul, that is the locus of consciousness, is the locus of the eternal nature of a sentient being. But at the same time, what kind of comes after that is entirely based on your relationship to others and a relationship to the world. And acknowledging that these things are, I guess, kind of constructs. That doesn't mean they're not real, but your relationship to your parents, how you might define yourself, or your relationship to your society, is a construct. It's not fundamentally the I am at the center of you. And his point is he's trying to get her to see how much to make her understand that there's a difference between who she is and how society defines her. So, for instance, the focus is to determine whether or not she believes she's the Messiah. And he eventually asks her, do you ever have doubts that you're the Messiah? And she says, yes, all the time. And that seems to be the only answer that pleases him. And they just kind of go through the various questions, and ultimately Sheridan shows up and he offers to take Delin's place and die instead of her. And this seems to really please the Inquisitor. And he says, you are the right people in the right place at the right time. You've been able to kind of transcend the selfishness at the heart of the human person and act in a manner completely coherent with who you are, regardless of the consequences. So this pleases him, and he leaves, stating the Vorlons will finally let him die, as he has finally seen the people who will save the galaxy, which was the goal in his life. So the next question offered, which is kind of you have the core of who you are, and you have vaguely how you relate to the outside world. So now we're going to start getting into meaning. So the second question is, what do you want? Which is the question asked by the shadows, and is kind of the question of chaos. The purpose of this is, in part, we define ourselves, well, simply by what we want. What are our goals? What is it we desire? You can tell a lot of a man's character and who he is by what it is he wants. Fame, fortune, virtue, to help others, to serve one's country, to serve oneself, sadism, justice. There's so many things that people can want and people can pursue. And by looking at what it is people wish for, that's a core aspect of their identity. It provides direction. The I am doesn't necessarily provide direction, but what people want and what they're willing to struggle for provides meaning in the universe. And once again, this is related to the core of the self. This isn't what society tells you want. This isn't what social expectation tells you want. This is what you want in terms of what the core of you desires. And like I said, throughout the series, we have Londo wishing to make his country and his nation great again. But the sacrifices necessary are not what he ultimately wants. Vir Kodo is the only one who ironically gets what he wants, because all he desires is for peace and the shadows to go away. When Sheridan wishes at the end for the shadows and Vorlons to leave and to let the younger races make their own decisions, they both accept it, happily understanding that the younger races finally understand who they are and what they want, and that their mission to shepherd them has been completely accomplished, and there's no more need for them to be around. Mr. Morden is kind of a satanic figure who the shadows have made into their agent, and he travels the galaxy asking people what they want and granting it to them. The shadows believe in a universe of chaos where order has broken down and social structure doesn't exist anymore, that humans will be free to pursue their desires. These desires don't have to be material, they don't even have to be selfish in nature, but what they want is people to be completely true to who they are and to not define themselves with regards to other beings. So that's the question of who you want. So I think these are both very important philosophical things you should ask yourself on a regular basis as a way to kind of define and know yourself. So the third question is, why are you here? Which, when Sheridan almost dies, Lorien, the first one, appears to him and asks him this question. It's basically, okay, you know who you are, you know what you want, but what gives you meaning in life? Do your desires give you meaning? What is kind of the theme of your life? What is your purpose beyond your desires and beyond who you are? And once again, this is kind of similar to the previous two questions, but it's also different. It's kind of present tense instead of future tense. There's lots of ways to answer this. I'm here for my children. I'm here for my country. I'm here to serve God's will, etc., etc. And this can be very important. I know for my part, there's been a lot of times in my life where I'm suicidal, but I haven't committed or really seriously attempted to commit suicide because I believe your life doesn't belong to you. It belongs to God. And it's wrong to take your own life for that reason. Also, I'm here because of my parents and my family, and I'd never subject them to that. So it's asking what is greater than yourself that you're committed to. Not just what you want, but what restrains your wants and what directs them. So then the second last question is, why are you going? Which is kind of a variant of why you're here, but it's kind of a combination of what you want and why you're here. So we have, where are you going? So let's just read this. If you have a purpose answering the previous question, are you doing something to edge closer to achieving that purpose or not? Are you achieving your purpose or not? Is there something holding you back, someone or something trying to deflect you from achieving your purpose so that you can be used to accomplishing theirs? To whose ends are you being used? So I guess that question is largely determined with, it's kind of a culmination of all the previous ones, where it asks you, I guess, to kind of look more practically, are you acting with regards to who you are? Are you looking to achieve what you want? And are both in line with what your purpose in life is? And it's kind of the final question asked at the end of the last episode, where Sheridan's dying after having accomplished everything in his life. And it kind of allows him to realize that he has fulfilled everything, and all that's left for him is to ascend and to leave the universe behind. The final question is, do you have anything worth living for? Which is debatable, as it's kind of a variation of the third question, why are you here? So, a very important question, all focus on you, the asker. This is the first question that asks what is important to you that is external to you and your life. It's also the first chance to ask questions above to this external influence. So this is about really how you relate to other things. So it's to really just kind of how you relate to other people is, I think, the purpose of, do you have anything worth living for? But I really think it's just kind of a variant of question 3, why are you here? So that's kind of the central focus, and characters will answer it based on their backgrounds, based on who and what they are, and based on their desires. You have characters like Sheridan or Delin, which broadly speaking act in line with who they are. And then you have characters like Londo and Veer, who are forced to act in opposition to who they fundamentally are. So that's kind of one of the core conflicts of the series. And I know I didn't talk too much about the plot, but while the plot is good, and Babylon 5 is one of the few sci-fi series to really have an ongoing plot that most episodes tie into, ultimately I think that the series is about metaphysics and questions of identity. So I'd recommend to watch it, but keep in mind it's an early 90s show. The special effects are awful, the sets are not good, and the acting is very hammy. I would, if you're going to watch it, start with season 2 and end with season 4, because season 1 has nothing to do with the plot, and season 5 is after the main plot's been resolved and there was no reason for it. So that's kind of a basic overview. I could talk about it all day. It is a 5-season show. Reviews of really long shows are difficult to do, but I'll leave you with this. Hopefully I'll get the review of DS9 out soon. So everybody have a good day, and I'll talk to you later.